I'm Matt.
I'm Shane.
And if you like what you hear, make sure you hit that thumbs up button real hard, and make sure you subscribe to Comic Movie Marks.
And also click that little bell for all of the notifications.
Whee!
Always remember,
If Trailer Trash can do it,
anyone can do it.
hello and welcome everyone to another Comic Movie Marks video.
This episode, we have a lot more tweets from Jay Oliva on Twitter. He's just been responding up a storm, just really kind of carrying the DCEU on his back, so to speak. Really just been championing it and replying to a lot of other tweets and from naysayers. So we will be talking about all of those.
Yeah, Jay Oliva has definitely gone out there just defending Zach's vision for the most part, trying to explain to people that maybe misunderstood the movies or just interpreted it in a different way. And he is taking the time to explain a lot of detail to people that may or may not have understand it. And he's going through it. He will patiently explain everything. I remember this guy called Superman a murderer, and he ended up doing like 5 or 6 additional tweets to the guy about how no, it's not what you think it is. He's not a murderer, and he's going through so much detail to try to explain to this one individual about it. And he's definitely championing this thing. And man, is he just out there now. He is just pushing this. It's crazy. It's awesome that someone's able to do this. And hopefully more people in positions like this, like Jay, you know, people that were part of production, maybe will follow suit a little bit more. Maybe some people from WB or something, or maybe some of the cast can maybe follow this a little bit and start explaining some of these things. Real
quick, the pessimist in me says, whose mind are you changing by just putting this out there? I feel like this is just more information for people like us who love these movies of like, oh yeah, see, you know, kind of thing. But to your point, on the optimistic side, if more people who are actually involved in the film go out there and are putting things out there, you're almost just taking the ammunition away from the people who are just shitting on all the DC movies for the hell of it. And you're saying, no, this is how it's supposed to be interpreted. This is how it was set out. This is how, you know, Justice League was supposed to be, yada, yada, yada.
Marcy comes over and she tells me that her ex-boyfriend was over late last night and yada, yada, yada. I'm really tired today.
What do you think she was tired from?
Well, obviously the yada, yada.
I ultimately, I do think it's a good thing that he's out there, and as Matt said, hopefully more people who are involved in the film will follow as well.
So this series of tweets got kicked off by a guy named Mark Hughes.
So his Twitter page says he's a screenwriter at Forbes, contributor and co-host of Superhero News CB, and top writer, also appears occasionally on the Huffington Post and Slate. Tweets reflect my own views, he says.
This whole little adventure with Jay Oliva here started off with Mark Hughes tweeting out, "I've tried to explain to fans a completed, in quotes, Snyder Cut doesn't exist. An initial cut was done with incomplete footage, missing pickups, no reshoots, missing VFX, etc. So it's impossible to release the Snyder Cut. That doesn't exist. But that said, there's an alternative." And it says 1 of 4, so he actually has more. We'll talk about his more. But Jay Oliva comes in there saying, other than incomplete VFX and maybe some reshoots for hookups, everything was shot that was storyboarded. Zach isn't that kind of director that creates a film in the edit bay. It's all planned out meticulously from beginning to end. That's how MOS and BVS was done. And that's something that we've always talked about, was Snyder's attention to detail and how he just does things in general. I think there is no wasted time with him. He thinks everything is probably necessary in some manner and has an eye for what he wants.
Absolutely, and that's one of my favorite things about him that we've talked about is, as you said, he's very meticulous, plans everything, puts so much detail into the type of paintings that are on the wall. Obviously, a lot of the dialogue that people use, how they're standing, how they're walking, how it's shot, everything, as opposed to some other directors, and this isn't to squash anyone else's approach, but a lot of them, they take different shots at things, and then in the editing room they go, oh, okay, this one works better, and there's a lot of different cuts, and they try things differently. And he may do that to an extent, but it definitely seems like the way that things are storyboarded, which we've seen from some of his storyboards, that's exactly how the scene comes out, and right down to exactly how he's going to shoot it.
I also want to point out one thing here that Mark Hughes says afterwards, not directly towards Jay Oliva, but he also says, I now think WB would be well served to take the existing theatrical cut and do some significant editing and reinsert a good 15 or so of deleted finished footage and resequence the film to something closer to Snyder's original cut and release that on Blu-ray. That is interesting that he presents that as a scenario, because I feel like people forget about history, and this is something that we're going to tackle later on, but down the road someday. But the Donner cut, that had incomplete shots in it. Okay, it had incomplete shots, so they made a cut of a movie with incomplete shots. Hell, one of the scenes in the movie is a screen test, for God's sakes. It's not even meant for them to be in the movie at all, not even close, but it's in that movie. So I think this is kind of a little lost, that people just don't realize history, even though that was only 12 years ago when that was released. It took 25 years for it to come out, but 12 years ago when it was released. So I don't know why he thinks that people want, I don't know, maybe I would like a completed cut. I really would, like everything done. But I'm perfectly fine with a 3-hour plus version of Snyder's vision with even those low-grade visuals that we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what we have been talking about since pretty much Justice League came out, is that it's just a matter of verbiage of what people want to use. People look at it and say, Snyder Cut, oh, that's impossible. They're not going to have completed footage. And it all comes down to what you would prefer. And yeah, in a perfect world, a fully complete version of Snyder's film that was supposed to be released in theater, that would be fantastic. I don't think that's going to happen unless he goes back in there and really starts editing it up. But I do think, and this is what Jay is saying, is that there's a large amount that has been shot that he already began to edit, that was in the editing room. So there is a cohesive story in there that is ready to go. And as we've brought up before, obviously someone had to see the quote unquote unwatchable version.
If you want to stand by that story that there was an unwatchable cut, well, guess what? That means there's a cut. Even if it doesn't have finished VFX, he probably put something together.
So Mark Hughes really just goes on this tirade about a bunch of different things. One of the tweets he says is, I'll stand by what I said. I spoke with folks during filming and post. They told me consistently there was VFX needed finishing, pickups needed, some scenes needing reshoots to adjust, plus a few new scenes Snyder wanted to add that the film was not in a finished form. I think people have different opinions, A/B degrees of completion of some parts, and how much work was needed to get stuff finished and ready, and really ready. I've said I think there is plenty of finished footage, but that it's not 99% complete, and I still believe that to be true. Then he continues, so I'll say this, if a true Snyder Cut 99 finish really exists, anyone with evidence who wants to go on record stating 99% of the film was in a form finished and ready to see should say it. Then he just continues, blah, blah, blah. Then Jay chimes in and says, what I meant with 99% is that all of the scenes Zack envisioned was shot and exists in one form or another. Of course, there are still VFX that it is unfinished, but I never inferred that the film was 99% done. Rather, that Zack's vision was all shot except for a few reshoots planned.
And what Jay is talking about there is, a while back, somebody asked him a question, like how much of Snyder's vision could still be intact in film? And he put 99%. And there is some people that took it a little bit out of context, that meant 99% of the film was done, or that at least 99% of the film was shot. But for the most part, from what Jay storyboarded and what they planned from the beginning, 99% of it was done. So yeah, to him, except for possibly some reshoots or pickups, and obviously VFX, there's nothing more to do. There is a cut. There is a cut, damn it. There is a cut out there. It just needs maybe a little bit of touch up and the VFX done. And I think that's what he's trying to say. And this, again, the battle of semantics here is like, I feel like we need to have like an Urban Dictionary definition of what Snyder Cut means.
No shit.
Because this is getting fucking ridiculous.
Fuck. Yeah. Yeah, no shit. Mark Hughes even kind of continues over the 99-cent bullshit.
Percent.
And what did I say? 99 cents? Yeah,
something you said 99 cents.
Well, that's all Mark Hughes' word is worth to me. So he's going back through saying, I've been trying to explain to them for months that all the footage filmed wasn't in completed form, still visual effects, tweets, blah, blah, blah. Then he says, so as I said, maybe 75 to 80% done, which that to me, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
With the rest being in need of VFX or missing pickups or reshoots, etc., and that it would cost millions of dollars to complete, which Warner Brothers isn't going to do. Okay, Mark, that's not what we're fucking asking. We want whatever they have put back together and fucking released. That's it. Exactly. So again, semantics and he just is not understanding. Like, to me, 80% of the film, that's pretty fucking solid.
Yeah, that's
like I'll take that.
Yeah,
any day.
That's better than anything Justice League would do. I'd take 80%.
That's right.
I would take 2% of a Snyder film over Justice League any day. So,
yes, absolutely.
So this again, yeah, the battle of semantics. And then Jay Oliva here also has another tweet. Every movie has scheduled reshoots. It's part of the post-production process. Some are more extensive than others. Some are because of technical problems with the footage, and others are creative reshoots for scenes that are reimagined or need additional photography for clarity. Because again, that Mark Hughes guy was talking about how it wasn't all shot. Not everything's there. And Oliva is of course saying that there's pickups and reshoots. Every film has that. Don't be stupid. But for the most part, what was storyboarded is complete. It's filmed. It's done. Ah,
right.
God damn it.
And you threw him out. God damn you. God damn you all to hell!
I don't even care at this point if there's, someone holding a pole with a tennis ball on top of it saying, look at this part because this is a parademon, and then the actors acting around it. I can use my fucking imagination. I was raised in the 90s. We had to use it all the fucking time. Like, at this point, if that's what they have, I just want to get an idea of how it was supposed to be, of what we were supposed to have. I'm sure it'll just piss me off even more, but just give us something.
So another guy named Diego Salazar, I believe here, is asking about the comments that Henry Cavill made, that he finally broke his silence about his mustache being an issue, and how he figured he was done with Justice League for the most part, and that's why he moved on to Mission Impossible, grew the mustache and everything. He didn't expect to come back. So this guy's a little confused by Henry Cavill's comments, and Jay Oliva says he probably was referring to the sequences he was in, since he wasn't in a majority of the film and probably didn't expect to be brought back for extensive reshoots, thus the mustache. So that explains that. What Cavill meant was that he wasn't expecting to come back to Justice League because his part wasn't as large as the others, so he should have been done. There's no reason for him to not be done. But they decided to change his whole fucking story.
Exactly. That's more evidence to at least show that the story arc for one character, arguably maybe the main character, it was done. So he was moved on. Okay, no reshoots for me, Zach. All right, sounds good. I'm gonna go over here and if I can work with Tom Cruise or whatever. And then, he was just going to piece everything else back together. Like, that was kind of it.
Another guy asked, was Soups not supposed to have such involvement in the final battle? Jay Oliva answers, no, he was involved. I drew a lot of Soups kicking ass, which we didn't really get to see. And then somebody makes a joke about AT&T owning WB. Does that mean now you can speak freely about the Justice League Snyder Cut? And he said, nope. If I bought AT&T, then maybe. I have to consult with my lawyers first. I don't know what people are expecting necessarily when it comes to the Snyder Cut, but what can happen is that there is a cut. Do we want all VFX done? Yeah, we would. But at the same time, this shit just doesn't make sense. I don't know why there's still an argument about this. Just to kind of keep pushing this notion a little bit more. So just so there's some clarification, nobody misinterprets things. That Mark Hughes guy came back at Jay Oliva about the 99% thing, saying, yeah, I mean, fans are saying it's 99% done because they don't understand all the process that go into it. They are misconstructing what folks mean who talk about some of this stuff. And Jay Oliva answers him, I think they are responding to people saying that the Snyder Cut prior to Whedon's involvement does not exist. It's not a cohesive story because Zack left. It may not be 100% polished, but all of the planned scenes were shot and edited into a full timeline. So there you go. There's, if you need any more confirmation about it, he pretty much fucking explains it right then and there. That's what it is. That's actually, you know, if we could, I would say this is your definition of a Snyder Cut right here. Right here. If we could get into Urban Dictionary or Wikipedia, this, or whatever the hell you need to do, this is it. It may not be 100% polished, but all of the planned scenes were shot and edited into a full timeline. Meaning it's cohesive. It's a cohesive story.
Holy shit balls.
That's all we're asking for.
That's it. That's what the Snyder Cut definition is. If everybody needs anything, just have a picture of Snyder right there with a comic movie Mark's background. And have, have this there. That's it. That's your definition.
Let me whip that up in Photoshop real quick, and we'll get it sent out. You can, you know, have it trending and, you know, all that good stuff. Maybe we'll get some more subscribers on YouTube.
You know, pretty much for the most part, I think he's cleared this up. So if anybody has any confusion of what's going on, I think Jay Oliva, for the most part, has pretty much wrapped it up right here. This is what it is. This is, goddamn it, what it is. So for shits and giggles, we're going to talk about one last little tweet here with Jay Oliva that I'm actually kind of surprised about. Hello, guys. Matt here. While editing this, I actually found more tweets from Jay Oliva. And just one last thing I wanted to throw into this mix that I thought was more telling news from Jay Oliva himself. But a guy named 2049 on Twitter posted some pictures that were in those behind-the-scenes featurettes that we saw on Justice League. And he says, I think about the existence of these shots every day. And it showed a picture of Supes kneeling down on a rock, and then all of the Justice League on a platform looking up at something. And Jay Oliva answers, that group shot I think was one of my shots I storyboarded. If only you knew what they were looking at. Damn you, Jay. Damn you for doing this to us. I'd love to see what everybody thinks in the comments. I have a feeling what the top two answers are going to be is either Darkseid or Green Lantern. I've seen some people talk about Green Lantern was supposed to be in this movie. I'm not quite sure where they got that information necessarily, but I know there was some Green Lanterns in the after credit scene. It was supposed to be Tomar Ray and Kilowog, but some people are under the idea that Green Lantern was part of the final battle. But I have a feeling this is what we know of as the Darkseid scene where Darkseid kills Steppenwolf, or he takes Steppenwolf from the battle and then kills him on Apocalypse. So I just wanted to add this one in. Keep going, Jay Oliva. You keep bringing us all this information. You're making us want it more and more. Matt out.
Someone by the name of Dr. Chris on Twitter says, I bet we were going to get mad shit in that final battle. Instead, we got freeze breath that wouldn't even make it onto the CW. Then Jay says, I'd like the freeze breath. By the way, that was one of the shots I drew. Someone else chimes in, says, his name's Paul. He says, mind blown. I am absolutely stunned that the freeze breath was Snyder. That to me didn't fit with the more realistic science fiction style depiction of the character from MOS and BVS. Oddly, I was able to buy into the heat vision though.
So this is what I thought when I read that, was that, yeah, maybe Oliva did draw up freeze breath, but it wasn't done like that, because we can tell by looking at it that's a reshoot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can tell the mustache. You can tell that is a reshoot. So maybe he did have freeze breath drawn up, and maybe like the other powers that Supes has, that Snyder has done in MOS and BVS, it would actually have an explanation, unlike this one where he just has it, so that way you get a couple idiots to go, ooh.
Right. Yeah. So he also continues. He says it was supposed to hint at the idea that Superman comes back stronger with his cosmic powers and with his comic powers. The freeze breath isn't just a Donner thing, it's part of Soup's skill set. I've used it in my animated films and series, and it's a thing that I don't feel is out of character. Remember, his arc was supposed to eventually turn into the Soups we all know from the comics and animated series. No turning back rotation of the Earth or throwing S, though. And then he has a crying, laughing face. So I thought that was a great way to sum it up, and pretty cool. It's kind of intriguing. You know, we do have the freeze breath. And again, more information and more evidence that Zack Snyder wanted to have a full story arc for Superman. I'm sure it would have been way better done than what we saw in Justice League. It probably would have made more sense. And as Jay even puts in here, that he was going to come back even stronger. So I'm sure it probably got used in a different context. And then, you know, Joss Whedon said, ooh, I'm going to steal that. And let me just have him fucking randomly have it. Instead of, we got to see, there's some other tweets that Jay talks about, and I've seen other people talk about with the heat vision, where the heat vision at first, you know, in Man of Steel, it hurts his eyes. And Jay, in some of his tweets, talks about that Superman couldn't fly and use the heat vision at the same time. Then in Batman v Superman, obviously he's floating up in the air and he lasers the shit out of Batman's, you know, guns that are shooting at Superman. And he doesn't have that same where he has to like shake it off or anything, because he's now more evolved. He's gotten used to the powers. So I'm sure at some point the freeze breath would have been incorporated that way. Just going back to the details that Snyder uses.
If not, if that's how Snyder was originally going to do it, then yeah, that's stupid.
Yeah, I find that really hard to believe, and we do know that that specific scene was a reshoot just because of the mustache, like you said. So.
In case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. You're one of very few to make it to the end.
Yes, thank you very much.
Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Comic Movie Marks Podcast and hit the notification bell. You know, all these fucking YouTube channels say this shit, so I'm going to say it now.
Yes, it's perfect. And if you want to hear our full podcast, you can check out our podcast on iTunes or any other podcast subscription service.
Make sure you subscribe. Thanks again.